Welcome back, Bucket Busters. I'm your host, Tim Johnson, and this is the Busted Bucket Podcast, locally grown here in Portland, Oregon, the City of Roses, City of Bridges, Stumptown, PDX. This is a show dedicated to Rip City and everyone who loves Portland basketball. Joining me is my co-host, Erik the Encyclopedia Foster. The
What's up, Rip City? Oh, I blew it.
Blazer, Ro Zapanta.
Look good, feel good, pod good, let's get it.
Oh, you did blow it there, and I wasn't giving you any help there. But gentlemen, I gotta say we got a good show lined up today. We have a special guest joining the show. He's the current radio play-by-play announcer and co-host of the Rip City Drive with Chad Doing. Travis Demers, thanks for joining the show, man.
Yeah, happy to be on with you guys. Thanks for thinking of me.
Absolutely. So, just a quick rundown. We're going to talk about the last two games. Blazers take on the Hornets and the Sixers. But first, we got some questions for you, Travis. And I hope you're ready.
Oh, I'm always ready.
So, first off, we figure you're probably traveling with the team. So, where are you calling from?
Beautiful, gorgeous Cleveland, Ohio.
Nice.
Said no one ever.
Yeah, I mean, all the hotel rooms look the same. But yeah, exactly. Said no one ever. I've been through Cleveland a couple of times. And so I like to get off on tangents. So my apologies now because it's going to happen.
That's all good.
Cleveland was when I moved to Portland in 2003, and my U-Haul broke down in Akron, and we had to stop. My buddy Mike was driving out with me, and we had nothing to do. So we're like, oh, let's drive into Cleveland. So we came into Cleveland. It was like a Thursday night, the weekend that like colleges were opening up, and there was like nobody and nothing happening. It was like the most boring night of my life. So that was my first and lasting impression of the blue metropolis that is Cleveland.
Nice. I think I heard Chad Doing call it the armpit of America today.
Yeah, he did.
I
don't think he's been to Detroit. So.
Apologies to any Cleveland Blazer fans out there.
No, not really.
So we got to ask, is Damian in the room with you too? Is he helping you prep for tomorrow?
Yeah, right. Like I'm not even sure Dame knows my name. Like, I'm only slightly exaggerating. Like every conversation that I've had with him, except for media day, so I guess that's different. It's been like on a microphone from far away and things like that. Dame's observant, so I'm sure he knows who I am. But like, we don't exactly have a relationship. Like our kids played together one time because of like a mutual friend, but like. Yeah, we're not tight. You know, when I was interviewing for this job, the Blazers, one of the higher ups, asked me, "So, what are you going to do to build good relationships with the players?" And I said, "Well, Dame's not making $30 million a year to be my friend, so stay out of their way." You know, it's weird to say because I make a living talking, but like be seen and not heard. You know, I don't want to get in anybody's way.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Before these guys start asking you questions, we're going to get to... we may as well just start off with the most important question of the entire evening here. And that is, who's better, MJ or LeBron?
Oh,
Don't worry about you being in Cleveland.
Yeah, no, it's Michael Jordan. And that's my opinion, right? So I'm 40. I'm an old guy. So I grew up with MJ, but I've also seen all of LeBron's career. Like I remember when he was in high school on the cover of Sports Illustrated. His second career game was at the Moda Center, then the Rose Garden, as we all know and love it. And he knew how to play the game, right? He's 18 years old, and he comes out to the interview area, and he's wearing a customized Oregon Ducks James 23 jersey, and he knew what he was doing. And I don't care about any of this stuff off the court, whatever you can call LeBron, whatever you want to say. On the court, to me, MJ was better, right? The way he was able to get to the rim, the killer instinct. Yeah, he had bad games. He had bad games in the playoffs. He wasn't perfect. But again, we're splitting hairs here, talking about two of the greatest basketball players of all time.
Right.
Is it an insult to either one of them to say the other's better? No, because they're both probably better than anybody who's ever played the game. I didn't see Kareem. I didn't see Bill Russell. I didn't see Wilt Chamberlain. I didn't see those guys. But for the guys that I've seen, MJ's the one guy that I would take over anybody else. And I would put Kobe in the conversation with those two also.
Oh, absolutely.
So, how close have you been paying attention to Twitter lately with guys like JJ Redick, Arenas, Al Harrington, all dogging on the 60s and 70s guys?
Not too much, right? Because I know, like, look, those guys are all around my age and a little bit younger, right? Like, for me, I don't know what it's like for you guys, but like, I grew up on sports history, like all kinds of sports, right? So whether it was hearing the legends of, guys from years past, me growing up in New York, one of the legends I heard about was Willis Reed with his bum leg coming out to lead the Knicks to a championship. So to me as a kid, Willis Reed was like this larger than life figure. I grew up on stories about Mickey Mantle, so much so that my youngest son's middle name is Mantle. Same thing with NFL and NHL guys too. And so to me, Wilt Chamberlain and Bill Russell, in a way, those guys are ghosts. They're these legendary players, even though, Wilt Chamberlain's dead and Bill Russell is still with us. Like, the players that they were ghosts. And like Babe Ruth, right? I never saw him play. He might as well play time as Wilt Chamberlain, because long before I was born. So I don't have any firsthand knowledge. We could see all the highlights we want. It's like when you see the highlight film of like the freshman quarterback that's never played in college. Oh man, this guy's awesome. Oh, really? You've only seen like 4 of his best plays, or like 3 minutes worth of his best plays in a video because he wants to impress scouts. You don't see when he locks in on a receiver and throws an interception. So like, it's really hard. Like, it's kind of an excuse and a cop out, but like, it's really hard to put today's players, when the game was so different, up against guys from back then. Like,
right.
Okay, I know he's related to Danny Shays. It's about really all I know about him. Hall of Famer. I know he's on the list. It's about it. I couldn't really tell you much about his game. So, like, if those guys want to talk trash about the guys who played of yesteryear, in a way it's offensive because you're talking poorly about the people who paved the way for you to have what you have. Like, NBA Finals games were on tape delay in the 80s. Like, it wasn't that long ago. That's in my lifetime that you couldn't watch the NBA Finals live. So if it wasn't for Jordan or Magic and Bird, who knows when that would have eventually happened. Obviously, everything you can see live now. But it's a very long-winded way of saying I have no idea how to compare today's guys or the guys that I've seen in my lifetime, Allen Iverson, to, Walt Frazier.
Well, I mean, also you have to, the way that I look at it is, if you're going to take the top 1% of athletes at any time, you have to assume that those top 1% of athletes are going to be able to translate to any era and adjust their game, because I mean, the mindset, the physical tools and gifts are all there. So sometimes I just shake my head, especially, I mean, Al Harrington was talking about Willis Reed dragging his leg up the court today. Like, that's just brutal. Brutal.
Well, so how is that any different than Michael Jordan's flu game, right? I mean, it was a different era. And to your point, Erik, it's a really good point, because, well, if that guy played in today's NBA, he wouldn't be able to keep up. Yeah, well, if that guy played in today's NBA and he was on the AAU circuits growing up and he trained.
Exactly.
He's got the talent, he's got the ability, whoever it was, Oscar Robertson, right? Never saw him play either. Could he have not played in today's NBA because it's a different game? No, he would have played under today's rules and today's training, under today's medical care, and he would have translated just fine.
Absolutely. I think you hit it right on the head there. You mentioned you grew up in New York.
Yeah.
How in the world did you end up all the way over here in little old Portland, Oregon? Did you know anything about Portland before you came over here?
Yeah, a little bit, because I'm such a sports nerd, right? So I knew about the Blazers, obviously, because I love the NBA. I remember seeing the Joey Harrington billboards in Times Square when I was in college. And I had a buddy who was my roommate. He was all about Joey Harrington, just because it was something different, right? Everybody wants to pick a team that's different. New York doesn't have a college football team. But when I graduated college in 2003, and I was producing for ABC Sports Radio, and I was producing this thing called the ABC Sports Call. So what we did was basically gathered highlights and sound bites from everything, and then sent it out to different stations across the country, right? So if you're listening to a station in Portland, like we use it still today at iHeart at Rip City Radio, if we play a highlight of tonight's World Series game tomorrow, that's where we get it from. So my job was, I interned there for 2 semesters, and then they hired me, and I was putting together these, these sound packages to all the affiliates. I didn't want to be a producer, and I had different people telling me that if you want to be on the air, go find somewhere to be on the air. So I sent out all these tapes and resumes, like all over the country. I have no idea how many. It was at least 50. It might have been closer to 100. And I applied for some jobs that like I had no business getting, like the Auburn play-by-play job. Like, 21 years old, fresh out of college, they're going to give me the Auburn play-by-play job. At least they wrote me a letter, which was nicer than most places. So my first job was doing high school football and basketball out on the coast. A guy named Matt Rickert, who does the Hops in Portland State now, he hired me, and I went out there to Astoria, and he was calling the games on KAST, doing the Astoria games, and he had me doing the other game on KSWB, which was Seaside or Warrenton, Ilwaco, Napa, just these small little towns. Mm-hmm. What's that?
Did you ever call for Taft?
I did. I called the Taft game. Don't ask me why, but I called the Taft game on September 12th, 2003. It was a Seaside Taft game, and I don't remember exactly the score, but it was a high-scoring game. The points were in the 40s, something like that. It was the only time I went out to Taft. But I did call a game there, yeah. So that was my first year here. That was 2003 into 04. I was doing high school basketball and high school football out on the coast.
That's awesome. So you got your start here at the coast. Now, let's fast forward a bit to current days.
Yes.
Travis, you got some big shoes to fill. How do you approach taking over the radio play-by-play for an absolute legend?
Well, first of all, I got great advice from Bill Schonely. And he told me, he said, don't try and be me. Don't try and be Wheels. Don't try and be anybody else. Just be you. Now, fortunately, when I started filling in, I did one preseason game in 2017, and then I did about half the season in 2018-19. I'd been doing play-by-play at that point for like 18 years. So it's not like I just showed up and this is the first time I'm calling games. Mm-hmm. So I had plenty of play-by-play experience, and I knew that I could call play-by-play. But when you're doing high school games, or I've done University of Portland stuff, I've done other college stuff, it's like you feel like you can do it at the highest level, but you don't know until you actually sit in that seat. And then you sit in that seat and you're like, holy, this is so much faster than anything else. How am I going to keep up? And that's what that first game is like, just trying to keep up. And, I've known Wheels a long, long time. The year that I was filling in for him and I talked often. And, when he wasn't going to keep going, he told me, he's like, look, if I can't keep doing this job, I hope you're the guy who takes over for me. So there wasn't
high praise.
Yeah, it was really cool to hear that from him. So there was no animosity. I had a lot of support from the Blazers organization, a lot of support from Bill Schonely and my family, of course. And there were a lot of fans who either didn't know who I was or were willing to accept me. There were also a lot of fans who's like, this guy's not Wheels. I'm not listening to this guy.
Yeah.
And I think about it from that perspective. Growing up, I used to listen to the radio a lot. My parents wouldn't let me watch TV, so I'd turn on the radio. I'd listen to WFAN at night. So I'd listen to the Knicks games. And Marv Albert did a lot of the Knicks games. Marv guy. Well, when he wasn't there, it just wasn't the same. They had this other guy filling in, this guy Mike Breen, and he was the fill-in guy when Marv Albert wasn't there. And at first, I'm like, I want to hear this. I want to hear Marv Albert. And we're talking about Mike Breen, who's doing the NBA Finals on ABC. He's a big-time broadcaster. I'm not saying I'm ever going to be at that level. Like I'm where I want to be. But I understand what it's like to be in the fans' seat, listening to the game and not hearing the familiar voice that you've heard for so long. And as a fan, I still listen to John Sterling, even though I'm not a big fan of some of his shtick. He's been calling the game since 1989. I was 7 years old when he started doing the games. So when he retires and somebody else is doing it, it's going to be weird and it's not going to sound right. So I get that from the fans' perspective, but there have been a lot of people who've really been accepting of me, and I've just gotta be me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I speak for all of us here when we say you're doing a great job.
Thank you.
Of course. I gotta ask, like that whole fan perspective. Do you get that because maybe from your time being out here before you even got this role? Did you become a Blazer fan?
Absolutely.
Prior?
There are a couple of things in that. So I grew up with the Knicks, right? The 94 Knicks, I was 12 years old. They went to the finals, and John Starks broke my heart because he was terrible in games. 95, I'm 13, and Patrick Ewing goes up for the layup in Game 7, and I cried. And then I went out to my driveway, lowered my rim, and I tried to practice that shot. I was never going to be 7 feet tall, and I still have friends who send me, memes of that play just randomly just to piss me off.
Oh, that's cruel.
It is cruel, right? And even the first time that I went to the Garden as a broadcaster, there's nobody out on the floor, and I walked out onto the floor. I'm like, oh, okay, so this is where Ewing missed that shot? Anyway, so I loved the Knicks as a kid, but the way I explain it is like, just because there was a girl who was your first love doesn't mean you marry her, right? So my wife, I'm 40 years old. I've known my wife for 5 years. She wasn't my first love, but she's the love I'm going to spend the rest of my life with, and that's how I look at it with the Blazers. They weren't my first love. But I started following the Knicks. I was probably 9 years old. I moved out here when I was 21, so I had 12 years of being a Knicks fan. I've been out here for 18 years. So I've been here long enough to be a Trailblazers fan. And I don't know if you can hear it in the calls or not, but I feel it with the fans when they win and when they lose. And even though I've only been working for the team for 4 years, I've been in the locker room for 18. And I've been at almost every single home game for 18 years. So when you're there, not everybody works that way, but for me, I can't be around something and that long and not having
become invested.
Yeah, there's a total emotional attachment to me with the Trailblazers. Yeah. It wasn't born and bred into me. I've been here a long time, and I love the Trailblazers.
Yeah, well, Travis, I was actually kind of wondering, you grew up a Knicks fan. Was there a game, a player interaction, a moment that you had with the Blazers that made you kind of fall in love, that you could kind of put a timestamp this was the moment? Oh, man. The moment. So when I got here, my first year here was the year that broke the Blazers streak of making the playoffs for 22 years, right? So the first few years that I was here, they weren't very good. Right, so there was a lot more access than you would usually get, but the moment that was it was really early on. So 2003, it was one of my first preseason games, and I was in a working capacity. My job was to go stick a microphone in the scrum with everybody and get audio. It was a week before my 22nd birthday, and I go in the locker room. I didn't know where I was going, and the only people in the locker room were me and Rasheed Wallace. And the Yankees Marlins World Series was on. And he's watching the TV and I'm watching the TV, and I'm a Yankees fan. I was in New York a few months before that. And I watch Alex Gonzalez hit a walk-off home run in the 11th inning off of Jeff Weaver. And Rasheed and me, he'll never remember it, but Rasheed and me kind of shared this moment because I was there and it was a big deal to me. That was the first connection that I had with a player. He probably didn't care at the time. He'll probably never remember it, but that was the first time that I had a connection with a player. So I became a Rasheed Wallace fan. Well, he was traded a few months later. He was traded in February that year. So it was a really small window of that. But, just being here and going to the games in person. And while I was a Knicks fan, I didn't go to a ton of games. Tickets were expensive. It was tough to get into the Garden. Right.
Nets games too, because they were cheap and it was easy to get in there because the Nets weren't very good. So it was pretty right away that I kind of fell for the Blazers because I was there. I think I only missed 3 or 4 games that first year.
Do you have a favorite moment, calling games for the Blazers?
Favorite moment, man. There's a couple. So that 4 overtime game against Denver in the playoffs.
That's a good one.
That game just would not end. It was. That was so the year that I was filling in for Wheels, I did all the games home and away until Thanksgiving. Then he came back to do home games. And then after the Oklahoma City series, he couldn't continue. So I did the entire Denver series. So that game 3, was the first home game that I had called since November. So like I had done all these road games, and I was used to being around the road fans and being calling games with the visiting crowd behind me. So there was this different energy for me being in the building, calling a game at home, and then just back and forth. And it looks like that Denver's going to win, and the Blazers force a turnover and tie it, and they get to another overtime, and Rodney Hood comes in and hits incredible shots. Like, I'll never call another game like that as long as I live. That was incredible. I mean, that was
Talk about
as
a
much
welcome
fun.
back game.
Yeah, exactly. Watching Kevin Durant miss a buzzer beater that same year at Golden State, that was fun. It was fun watching KD miss that like on the other end. Melo's buzzer beater in Toronto was pretty cool. And while I wasn't there because we weren't traveling last year, the game at Chicago last year, where Gary Trent Jr. forced the jump ball, they get it, and Dame hits the 3. That was awesome. I wish I could have been in that building.
So what's that like? What was that like for you during the pandemic to call games remotely?
It was weird because, like, I don't know about you guys, but I know a lot of people of my age, like, we'd do our own play-by-play while playing video games. You know, whether it was NBA Jam, whatever it was, you know, we would do the play-by-play. So, like, it was kind of like that, right? And I would practice when I was younger, like in my early 20s, of, you know, calling games off of the TV. So that wasn't that big of a deal. Like, the actual action itself wasn't that big of a deal. But there were so many things that happen off camera that you don't see and you don't realize until you're not there. Or there's a replay covering something up. Or, you know, the ball is off camera and a foul happens in the backcourt, but the camera's already showing the front court, and you have no idea what happens. Sometimes if there's a whistle and it happens away from the ball, and I'm looking at the ball, I'll quickly look to the official to see what the call was, so I know what the foul was and who it was on. On TV, you don't always get that. So there were just little things that I missed. And then the energy, like, you guys have been at Moda Center, when it's loud, you can literally feel in the floor how loud that place is. Mm-hmm. So in my ears, it didn't really sound any different because we were getting crowd noise. So, like, having energy, I didn't feel like I had to manufacture it, but it just wasn't the same. There was energy. It just wasn't that same level of having, you know, 19, 20,000 people just going crazy and having the lights and, you know, having the dancers on the floor and, you know, people throwing stuff into the crowd, like T-shirts and stuff like that. All of that stuff wasn't there for the home games, right? That was the home games. And then the road games, literally myself, Michael Holton, and Jay Allen, we would call the games from our regular spot in the bowl, and we were the only people in the entire bowl. So Brooke Olzendam, who's on the other side of the arena on the concourse doing her pre and post game show stuff, she could hear us sometimes.
Oh, jeez.
It was just weird. It was eerie. We got used to it. And then that first game back when there were like 2,000 fans, it felt like there was 18,000. It was
right
weird. And now it just feels kind of back to normal.
Mm-hmm. I gotta ask, how much interaction do you have with Lamar Hurd and Kevin Calabro?
Pretty good amount.
Is there kind of like I ask because I imagine there's some kind of like sibling rivalry going on there.
No, there is. I got to call a game on radio during the bowl. Michael Holton wasn't available for the playing game against Memphis, and it was a national broadcast, so TV didn't have broadcast. So Lamar did that game with me. I love Lamar. Lamar is awesome. He's a fun dude. He's positive. I love being around Lamar. And Kevin is a guy that I grew up listening to because he did a lot of national stuff. So for me, like, I'll ask Kevin stuff about the 90s and the 80s, and I feel like an annoying kid sometimes around him because long, but it's like, hey, you know, that Chris Farley bit from Saturday Night Live. It's like, hey, Kevin, you remember when this happened? You know, like stuff like that. Like, he's so cool. Those guys are awesome. And like on the road, we have dinner around the same time, so I'll usually sit with those guys. I did last night in Philadelphia, and you know, I'll just kind of pick their brain or talk to them about whatever. And you know, Kevin and Lamar are awesome. I love those guys.
That's great. I definitely thought there'd be some kind of rivalry or something. You know, they're on TV, you're on the radio.
No, we're
Kevin
all
kind
on
of
the same team.
Kevin kind of seems like a prankster.
Yeah.
Is he a prankster?
I get that from him. There was one time a couple of years ago, we were in Houston. We were having dinner at some Mexican restaurant there, and somebody told the wait staff there that it was his birthday. And his birthday's in June, and this was, I don't know, the basketball season. And so they came out with a little cake, and they're all singing to him, and he just totally went along with it. He's like, yeah, it's birthday, yeah. Some other people would be like, oh my God, get these away from me, it's not my birthday. But he was all into it. It was pretty awesome.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. So aside from the radio play-by-play, you host a radio show with Chad Dewing.
Yeah.
We were all kind of talking about it before you came on, but where does he rank as far as, your favorite coworkers?
Oh, he's right up there. So
I mean, just know he probably listens to this show.
That's fine. I hope he does. I'm not going to say anything here that I wouldn't say to him, because there's stuff that I say to him and on the air that you would think, why is he saying that to him? Like, we have a really good relationship. Chad and I are friends. Like, we've taken trips together and stuff. We've gone to like the Army-Navy game. We went to a Broncos-Giants game in Denver one year. We've spent time together on the road for Tactile Media Day and stuff. Like, Chad and I are good friends. So we have the kind of relationship where we can give each other crap. But the one thing about Chad is he works really, really hard. Like, he really cares about what he does. And I've worked with some people that just kind of show up and go through the motions. He's not like that. We get into arguments sometimes. It's infrequent, but it happens when we're planning out the show. But it's just because we both care so much about what we're doing. And I'm okay with that, because it's always quick and we always kind of get over it, like that. And I'm glad we have that kind of relationship, because we don't hold anything back. Like, if he thinks that I have a dumb topic idea, he'll tell me, and he'll say it just like that. He's like, I don't want to talk about that. Like, I don't have a take on that. But then sometimes we'll talk it out, and he finds that he does have a take on that. And then we end up talking about that on the show. Sometimes he doesn't, and we don't talk about it, and vice versa. But I've worked with some awesome people. I love working with Michael Holton. He's terrific. He's taught me so much about basketball and off the floor too. I've done a lot of work, calling games with Jim Wilson, and that dude is as prepared as anybody that I've ever worked with. But Chad's great, and this setup that we have, where I don't do the show when I'm on the road or on game days, he has no problem covering. The last couple of weeks, my voice has been rough. Like, I couldn't make it through a couple of the games. I pushed through and did it, but Chad would tell me, don't come in and do the show tomorrow. I got it, because he cares, and he knows that my voice is my lifeline, just like his. And I would do the same for him. So I love working with Chad. I know some of the things that he says people don't quite understand, and it might rub people the wrong way, but I know for 100% certainty, the only thing he cares about with the Trailblazers is winning a championship, period. Anything short of that is not good enough for him. And he cares. He cares about the team, and he cares about people, and he works hard. I can't ask for more.
Yeah, I get that vibe too. Sorry, Erik. I know you had something to say, but before we get to you, the one thing I wanted to say about Chad is that a lot of times when I'm listening to him, I don't agree with him, but at the same time, I kind of respect him, just because he puts in the effort. He knows what he's talking about. It's just it's a matter of differing opinions. So
totally.
That's really cool to hear what you had to say about that.
Yeah, we disagree on a lot of stuff. Sometimes he's proven right, and sometimes I'm proven right. Sometimes we're both wrong, but we have to agree, and that's what I like about that. We don't have to walk around on eggshells with each other.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Erik.
So, I know you like working with him.
Yeah.
I know you probably see yourself at bare minimum an equal, if not fairly superior. I have to know, though, is there any animosity with the fact that this guy is Twitter verified and you are not?
All right, so there's a two-part question there. In terms of, being superior. So when Chad came to Portland, so the way the radio structure works is like, okay, so there's the regional president, and then there's the market president. The The market president oversees all of the stations in the building. And at iHeart, we have 8, 9 stations. And then there's a program director. A lot of times the program director oversees one station. In our case, it's more than one. And then just below that is the assistant program director. Before Chad got hired, I was the assistant program director. And I was told that we're going to find you a co-host. So I'm like, yeah, I don't want you to hire somebody that I don't want to work with. And I found out that Chad had become available. So I called Chad. I'm like, hey, you want to come up here and work with me? And it worked out. So there was a period of time there when I was Chad's boss. The Blazers gig, I had to give up those responsibilities. Well, guess who they went to? They went to Chad. Chad, my boss. So you want to talk about superiority? He's got it over me because he's,
he's the man
management, and I'm not. Yeah,
he is the man.
Yeah. So if anything, that's on him. With the verification, so a few years ago, we both applied for the verification at the same time. He got it. Cool. I didn't. Wasn't that big of a deal to me. I didn't really care. And then over the summer, when the verification process came back, my boss with the Blazers said, look, you probably need to be verified. So why don't you go ahead and start that process? Nope. Okay, let's try it again. No. One more time. Nope. How about a fourth time? No. So I'm 0 for 4. If you count the one a few years ago, now I'm 0 for 5. And look, Chad's got probably twice as many followers as I do. And what he says to me is like, look, you're the voice of the Blazers. You don't need verification, right? But is there something that's a little, strokes the ego a little bit when you've got that? Yeah, of course it does. But I'm also not the only NBA radio play-by-play guy who doesn't have a blue check mark. I think there are at least a few others. Even Mark Boyle has been doing the Pacers for like 30 years. He can't get one either. So that makes me feel a little bit better. When it comes to Chad, I'm not saying he's not deserving of his check mark, because he absolutely is. But come on, Twitter, give me a hand. A real human being anywhere, hold for, trying to get car insurance. You just sit on hold for like 45 minutes. You don't even have that option with Twitter. You tweet it verified. They've got 4 million followers and people tweeting at them every day. They're not going to respond to anything. So when I have people on Twitter that tweet at verified, we need to get this man verified. That's really cool. But it's a waste of time because they're not going to pay any attention. If I don't have checks, and one of the checks is you have to have within the last 6 months, either articles written about you or by you. There's nothing to write about me, right? I don't think they're right. So no blue check mark for now, and I'll have to live with that.
Well, we're tight with Aaron Fintress. We'll get one of those articles written for you. Don't even worry about that.
You're sure that's a good idea?
I'm looking at this though. 6,886 people care what you say on a daily basis.
No. Okay. So before I got this job, I had 4,000 followers. You know what got me more followers? 2,000 more followers over the last couple of years? Anytime that I say, hey, I'm giving away free tickets.
Yeah.
The followers number just go. So if it wasn't for that, I'd probably have 4. By the way, that's one of the reasons I do it, is to get more followers. Just total transparency here. Because I know people are going to hit follow, free tickets, follow. So I'm going to keep
don't you get a check mark? Don't you get verified if you have a certain number of followers too?
No, because I've seen 100,000 followers that aren't verified, and I've seen people that have 800 followers that are verified.
That's crazy. See, I was gonna say, how come Chad hasn't come out with a follow train for his buddy Travis? That's messed up.
It's not gonna do anything. Verified doesn't care.
It's that LeBron Melo relationship. All talk.
Yeah.
Not quite.
Oh, that's great. Let's see, what else do we have? So, when you're calling the games,
yeah,
getting back on track here. When you're calling the games, are you actually able to take in what's going on and actually analyze the game, or are you just kind of stuck in work mode?
Yes and no. Sometimes I can, right? Because my job is to follow the ball, right? I need the ball is. And Michael will, my job is to tell you what happens. Michael's job is to tell you why. But there's plenty of things that I pick up, because the view we have is great. I don't know if this was something you were going to ask, but there are very few arenas that were actually on the floor. Radio isn't on the floor pretty much anywhere anymore because they sell those seats. I like being where we are better because I can see the whole floor. When you're courtside, you're being blocked by a referee, by a coach, there's a player in front of you. There was a game-winning shot by Mo Harkless against the Lakers a few years ago, and I was sitting courtside that game. I never saw the shot. So I'm trying to see, because I'm sitting here on one free throw line, and the action's happening over there in that far corner, and there's all this stuff blocking me. And because the cameras are on the other side, I'm watching the action go like this, but on my monitor, the action's going like this, so it's backwards. I'm going like this because I hadn't really sat courtside more than once or twice, and all I saw was the ball go up in the air. And by process of elimination of who I could see, I knew that Harkless took the shot, and I felt like I blew the call. It didn't sound very good because I didn't see what happened. So I like where we're at, and there are things that I can pick up. I can pick up on the defenses in zone. I can see there are times where you can clearly see where I'm sitting when someone gets lost behind the defense, or when there's a run out and somebody gets a rebound and they don't see, somebody streaking down the floor. But and sometimes when there's when the ball rotates this way and all the defenders go that way, I can tell, I know that it's going to rotate back around to this side and someone's going to get an open three. Just somebody else can watching the game. So sometimes, I can pick up on that stuff, but I try and watch the ball first. And if I can pick up other things, great. But if not, I don't want to lose track of where the ball is.
Okay. So then we're going to test you a little bit here, because this is the part where we're going to start asking you about the team and what you see. So this season, we're curious because, there's a lot. It feels like there's a lot of turmoil right now if you're paying attention to social media and whatnot. But how are you seeing the team right now? Are they in a situation where they just have no idea what's going on, or are we still the same team that we were last year, or are they in a situation where maybe they're still learning and trying to stay within the system that Chauncey's brought to the team?
I think it's a big learning curve, and I don't know how many games it's going to take. 15, 20, whatever it is. But in the Phoenix game, second game of the season, looked like they did everything right. Then they go to LA. And it's what happened? Where's the team that I saw the other night? And then they looked really good against Memphis in the first half against the Clippers. And then LA made it a 4-point game. And then all of a sudden, the Blazers looked like that team that we saw in those other games. First half against Charlotte looked great. They never really got any kind of a rhythm against Philly last night. So what I see is a coaching staff, and it's not just Chauncey, right? We hear so much about, Chauncey this and Chauncey that, all the things that Chauncey wants to do. This is Chauncey's first time being a head coach. So while there are a lot of things about him that are really important about what this team is doing, the coaching staff really plays a huge part in this, right? Roy Rogers coming in as the defensive coordinator. I watched the first 2 days of training camp practice. I watched the entire thing. Roy Rogers was the one out there working on the defense with the players, and then Chauncey would stop things when he saw something he didn't like and say, okay, we need to do this, this, and this here. But it was Roy Rogers who was the one who was getting the ball rolling with where they were supposed to be and what these different formations and schemes and everything looked like. And it's a lot to learn. I've seen in years past, and the things that they were doing in training camp were very different than what happened in years past. Things that they were working on defensively. And in those practices, whatever the drill was that they were doing, they did it until they got it right. And it didn't matter how many times they did it. It's no, we are going to get this right because this is important, right? It wasn't, that's good enough. No, this is going to be right. We're not going to get to anything else until we get this right. There was one drill where they had to make X number of 3-pointers and X number of time. They were one short. Guess what? Got to do it again. And that takes a lot out of you. So it's also about, conditioning and things like that. And it's not a knock on Terry Stotts. I think there were a lot of things that Terry Stotts did that I liked, but that was more of our offense is so good, we're going to rely on that to win games. And to do that at times when the offense wasn't working right. The game against Memphis, offense wasn't great that night, but the defense was. And I think there's going to be times where it slips and they're thinking too much at times. Now, I could be off on that, but from what I see, there's more thinking than reacting and having it be second nature. Whatever it does, like the first time you drove a car, right? Maybe you were in the car with your mom or dad, and like my mom was like pushing on the pretend brake, and I'm, looking around and, trying not to screw up. Now I just drive. And I think it's kind of similar to that. Like at some point, whatever it is that you're doing becomes second nature, and they're learning different things and trying to execute different things. And it's not second nature yet. And I think when it does become second nature, they're going to be a really good defensive team. And there are also some things offensively that they're trying to figure out. And one of the things that I've seen that I really like from this team offensively is they don't settle. Sometimes they do, not because they never, but the plan is to not settle for bad contested three-pointers. They did in the last few years, and Dame made a lot of those the last few years. But now at sometimes they're almost too passive in making the extra pass. And that's where some of those turnovers come in. They try and get it into the paint and they force the ball, and then the other team will get a run out and get, points off of turnovers and fast break and things like that. But they're trying to train themselves from, again, this is just what I see. Nobody's told me this. From taking contested threes, double teamed, not knowing where to go with the ball, things like that, to making sure you rotate the ball to the corners, get corner threes, get open looks, work inside out, pick and rolls. Obviously, they still do quite a bit of that and try and get Nurk involved on both ends of the floor. So they're just different things that they're doing, and that takes time considering they had a week of training camp, 4 preseason games that the starters together played 18 minutes in, and then you don't get to practice much when you're traveling and you don't have many days off. So if this was, like olden days, right? With those guys we were talking about before, you had a month of training camp and you played in preseason games because everybody was out of shape. You had time to work out all those things. You don't have that time anymore. Guys come into camp ready to go. It's not about getting in shape like it used to be. So when you talk about and you hear so much about, okay, well, this team has continuity coming back from last year, like Utah last year, they got off to that really hot start. They have so much continuity. There's only one rotation player who was not in the rotation last year, and they've got the same coach and same coaching staff. It really does make a difference because you don't have to think, you just do. So you have to think and you don't just do. It prevents you from doing to the level and executing to the level that you want to. And they're not there. And I don't think anybody on the team, coaching staff, players, anybody would tell you that they are there. They're on the way. But when they get there, I think it's going to look really good.
Yeah, I'm surprised. I'm surprised by people. Sorry, go ahead, Tim.
No, I was just going to say, I think we're all hoping for the same thing. And I think, a lot of what we're seeing on social media right now is just the impatience,
Oh, I haven't noticed that. Not at all.
Well, it's like, you get a new coach, you get a few new players, and all of a sudden you're supposed to be this championship contender right out of the gates. And that's, I mean, the fact of the matter is it just doesn't work like that. It never really has.
Well, I mean, one of the things, too, is you have a group of people, and they're loud. It's a loud contingent of Twitter people, Twitter peeps, tweeps, whatever, that are willing to just come down with the hammer after 7 games on a team that, I mean, most of these core guys have only had one coach the majority of their careers or their entire careers, if you're talking about our top 2 guys. And we're 7 games into a new system. We're 7 games into the first season under a new coach in 9 years. And people are ready to just throw this team out the window. I personally said, I'm not saying anything until Christmas. Like, I'm giving them until Christmas. Let's let them figure it out, iron it out, But these people it's just surprising to me that they're not willing to be a little bit more patient with a group of guys, especially with Damian Lillard at the helm. I mean, I realize that he's in a slump, but at the same time, like, the body of work says this is going to phase out at some point.
Yeah. Well, what was that? Go ahead.
Well, I was going to, and you got to remember that, for 9 years, Dame was used to pounding the rock to get into a rhythm, and now that's not the case. Now
Yeah.
now the strategy is completely different.
I
I
had
didn't
to
mean to
throw-
cut you off, Travis.
No, you're fine. And there's a reason for that, right? Like, we hear so much about rest and load management and stuff like that. And look, there is a way to rest without taking games off. And part of that is not being on the ball 100% of the time, playing minutes that are easier on your body and easier on your condition. And we saw it a little bit last year, right? Because there were times when Rodney Hood was still here where he would take the ball up, or Carmelo Anthony would. There are plenty of times where Dame is playing off the ball now, and his minutes are down, a few minutes a game. But if you take 3-4 minutes a night off of his game, same thing with CJ too. It's not just about Dame. And
Yeah, they're both about 32 minutes right now.
yeah, they're right in that ballpark. So you take some of those minutes off, and the minutes aren't as hard on their bodies. Well, now there's less of a reason to have a rest night, and maybe they will have a rest night at some point. But the whole key here is when you get to the end of the season, when you get to the playoffs, making sure that your team isn't gassed. And more depth in the backcourt. Anthony's been great this year. CJ's off to a start. You have Dennis Smith Jr. there if you need him, and he's getting some playing time. So you don't have to have Damian Lillard be the point guard. And he's still putting up 8+ assists a night. It's not like he's not distributing. And you have more guys around him that can shoot. He doesn't have to take 25 shots, right? I mean, Norman Powell was the leading scorer last night with 22. CJ had 20. So it's about the wear and tear in game too, not just taking nights off. But Erik, to your point about people freaking out, like, that's what fans do, like a lot of that's nothing new. The difference is now that anybody can say it and everybody can hear it. Like, but before we had social media, before we had cell phones, I don't want to be that guy, but like it wasn't always that way. Fans were always angry. Like, if you've noticed on talk radio now, like, there's not a lot of callers on talk radio. Growing up, that's all it was callers.
I used to wait hours.
Yeah.
I call at the beginning of the show before you guys even open the lines. I'm like, I'm just waiting.
Exactly. And it's exactly what it was like. And you wait on hold for a long, long time. Sometimes you wouldn't get through because that's where people voiced their opinions. And they weren't any different. There's just a different way to hear them now. So fans are just as impatient. And I'm not going to be one of those people who says, well, if you think they suck, then you don't know what you're talking about. Well, of course fans don't know what they're talking about to the level that the players and coaches and broadcasters, because I see every single thing that happens. Fans don't, and they don't see what's going on behind the scenes. So when people see something and they freak out about it, and I see, I'm like, that's not that big of a deal because I know why this is happening there. With the information that people have, I understand why some people freak out about it. At the same time, though, you're right. We're talking about 7 games into a season with a new coaching staff and trying different things. And I saw one person on Twitter today was like, this team sucks. I can't watch anymore. Like, are you seriously? Like, a little bit of time before you jump off the ship.
Yeah, I had to just like throw my phone in the air like I'm done with NBA Twitter after I read like people saying Westbrook is a better shooter than Dame Lillard. I was like, are you serious? Just after 7 games? Like, please, what are we doing here? But Travis, I wanted to ask you.
The worst 3-point percentage in the NBA last year of anybody who took at least 53s. Russell Westbrook.
Yes, amen.
And none of us here are surprised.
Nope.
No.
That isn't. Yeah, we all could have guessed that one. But
Yeah.
Travis, I actually you named like a whole bunch of like supporting players. I wanted to know, before the season started, did you have like a breakout player prediction for this year?
Not really, but the piece that Jason Quick put out where he was talking about what Neil O'Shea says, and every year there's somebody that Neil O'Shea talks about. One year was Gary Trent Jr., and he was awesome. One year it was Jake Layman, and he had a terrific year. And this year it was Nasir Little. I really wanted to see what Nas could do, and I really wanted to see what Anthony Simons could do. And so far, the early returns are great. For Little, he has so much energy, and he always has. And sometimes his body moved a little bit too fast, and he would make mistakes, or he would turn the ball over, or overrun a rebound, or mistime a jump, or things like that. And it looks like things have settled down for him. And he's hitting threes. When he was drafted, people were melting down because oh, we just drafted a guy who can't hit a three-pointer. Well, we're also talking about a guy who played 1 year of college basketball.
Barely 1 year, too.
Yeah, barely a year of college basketball. So his three has become reliable, right? And I think he's sitting around 40%. I haven't finished my prep for tomorrow yet, but I think he's sitting around 40%. So if he can be that energy 3-and-D guy off the bench and play 18 to 20, 22 minutes or start when Norman Powell is out, or if Demers CJ sit out and Powell slides to one of the other guard spots and you can rely on Nasir Little. I think that's such a critical spot, because when we talk about trades and people talk about trades, well, the Blazers need to go get a 3-and-D wing. Well, you got one. If that's what it can be, and we talk about, okay, well, if we move this guy or we move that guy, what type of player are we going to get? Nasir can fill that position. He's long enough. He's athletic enough. If he can shoot and play defense, that's one less thing that Neil Olshey has to worry about come trade deadline.
So I am of the mind that this roster is far more balanced than people on social media are giving it credit for. Do you share that sentiment?
Yeah, for the most part, I do. I mean, the one thing that you can't deny is height, right? So height and length. But you have height and length coming off the bench, right? If you have Nasir Little, Larry Nance Jr., Cody Zeller, there is some length there. Would I like to see somebody else that has some length that can be in the rotation? Yeah, probably. But then again, you also have Tony Snell. And we saw Tony Snell for the first time last night. Mm-hmm. I have no idea who Tony Snell is going to be as a Trailblazer. I mean, honestly, I have not watched a lot of Tony Snell in his career. Like, I don't know how many Blazers fans have. So when he comes in, he's kind of an unknown. How many people ripped the Cody Zeller signing because, oh, look at this guy, look at his...
All three of us.
Well, no. Eric complimented Cody Zeller. Let's give him credit here.
What, on his nickname?
No, the Big Handsome was the one knock I had on him. I told you guys.
You're just mad that he took your nickname, man.
All I said about Cody Zeller was, you guys are going to be surprised. The guy sets amazing picks. He moves his feet from left to right, and he can pass. And that was a leg up for me. That was two legs up for me on Enes Kanter.
Oh yeah, and he's giving Nurk a run for his money for shots to the face.
Yeah, and Robert Covington.
My goodness,
that mix, man. But like the thing about Zeller, like I really didn't know what to think about him. I used to be huge into college basketball, so a lot of Cody Zeller in college at Indiana. I don't have much time. I don't really watch much of it anymore. But I just didn't really know who he was as an NBA player. Now you're talking about a guy who was a lottery pick, played 8 years with one team, and now he's signing for the veteran minimum. Like, am I missing something here? Is this not the guy that I thought he was? And he is not a starter in the NBA. But if he's your backup center, I like it. I like it a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's a reason that guy gets hurt, because he puts everything that he has out there. And he's become a fan favorite 7 games in. So, like, these ideas that we have, I have no idea what Tony Snell is going to do. So if you have Snell, you have Little, you have Nance, you have Zeller, some length coming off the bench, and that group defensively has looked really good. You have a solid guard rotation of Dame and CJ. I still count Powell as a guard, even though he's playing small forward. And for Simons, you have Dennis Smith Jr., who is still a really young player. I think there's a lot to work with, right? The Blazers don't have a first-round pick next year. And I asked Neil Olshey about that. And I said, so look, if you don't have a first-round pick next year, does that make it more difficult to execute a trade with a first-round pick in the future? He said, if we want to figure out a way to do it, we'll figure out a way to do it within the confines of the rules. So if they want to trade something and attach a first-round pick, they do have that ability. I don't know all the details about how that would work, but it is a possibility. So you can add that in there. And what I see is, and I don't think Dame and CJ are the same guy. I don't think, with Nance and with Snell and Little, that they're the same guy. There are some similar things that those guys all do, but they all bring different things. So when the trade deadline rolls around, I feel like Neil Olshey has more flexibility than people want to give him credit for. And it's not that I'm saying you got to give him credit for the deals that he's done. Forget about everything that's happened up to this point, right? All I care about is what's happening next. Is there somebody in that rotation who is expendable. And I don't mean that as a knock on whoever that is, because whatever you're giving up, you've got to get something back that you need. And there are some things that this team needs. So I don't know who it is that would be traded or is going to be traded, because every year it seems like he makes some kind of deal. Powell last year, Rodney Hood a few years ago, picked up Yusuf Nurkic. He did pick up Nurk in a trade, but picked up Enes Kanter off the buyout market, which they have more money than anybody else to use in the buyout market this year, with the mid-level exception. I think they still have about $4 million left of that. There is a ton of flexibility that Neil has to change and mold the roster at the trade deadline. And when I hear fans today talk about, we need to trade this guy now. Why? I wouldn't trade anybody right now, because you don't know what this team is right now. You know who the players are, but what does this team look like in this system? And it's going to take some time. Maybe it's 10 games, maybe it's 20, I don't know. But if it was me running the ship, I wouldn't make a deal until I know what I have. And I don't think what they have right now in this system. Maybe one of the pieces fits really well that you didn't think would. Maybe somebody doesn't fit that you thought would fit really well. And now that's Neil Olshey and the front office's job to look at what you have within the confines of this system and figure out what's going to make it better.
Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code TBPN. Bet just $5 on any NBA team to win their game and win $200 in free bets. If they win, you win with promo code TBPN this week at DraftKings Sportsbook, an authorized sports betting partner of the NBA. Must be 21 or older, New Jersey, Indiana, Pennsylvania only. New customers only. Minimum $5 deposit and $1 wager required. One per customer. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Absolutely. I want to talk about that Hornets game.
Yeah.
So for those fans out there who didn't catch the games, spoiler alert, Blazers lost to the Hornets 125 to 113.
That was definitely a spoiler.
Yeah.
Nobody, they don't have a pocket-sized computer.
Just saying.
Don't worry about it,
some
Tim.
people DVR. Maybe they're not home for a few days. Who knows? But just looking at the game stats, I mean, it was an interesting game for Dame. He only ended up with 14 points. He did have 12 assists, but he shot 2 for 14 from 3, which is unlike Dame, but not unlike Dame to start this season, it seems. What did you get from watching his performance that game, Travis? Could you see something that may have been bothering him, or is it just kind of just him again going back to trying to stay within the confines of the system?
Yeah, I think it's really easy to look at Dame and say any number of different things. Well, he's clearly not himself, really, because when they were winning, a few games ago, he looked just fine. You could say, well, he's not the guy that he used to be yet, because he all of a sudden overnight, isn't as good. He had a long summer, right? He got married, got some young kids at home. Oh yeah, he played in the Olympics, which he hasn't done before. So maybe there's a little bit of fatigue there. He'll never say it, and I don't know if that's the case, but I'm sure there is at least something to that. And then you're running a whole different system offensively. And there are some elements of things that we saw in the past. But I think also with Dame, he's not immune to a learning curve. So I think that's part of it too, that, we know he can shoot. And some of those shots are just close. Now, hell, maybe Paul George was right. Maybe it's the new ball. I don't know. But I'm not worried about it. Again, I think it's something where it takes time. And you see it in every sport. Like, does Patrick Mahomes all of a sudden suck now because he's throwing so many interceptions? No, you give credit to the other team sometimes because they know who he is and they know how to game plan. Sometimes there are things that happen on the floor that just don't go your way. And then all of those other factors together, I think it's just led to a slow start for him. I wouldn't be worried about it at all. If we're looking at, January and he's still shooting 20% from 3, then I think there might be something to think about there. But I don't anticipate that being an issue, and I'm not worried about it.
I've seen some chatter that.
What about you guys?
I saw some chatter today that they said that Dame isn't used to playing off the ball. He's not a good guy if he doesn't have the ball in his hands and he's dictating tempo. And I kind of laughed because it's like people have some kind of long-term memory loss, because the first 3 years that he was here, he played alongside Nicholas Batum, who handled that ball probably 30-40% of the time. And Dame was a very effective player, and that's when we all fell in love with Damian Lillard before he became the guy. Mm-hmm. So, and if you look at the shots that he's taking, those are quality shots, and those are shots that typically are going to drop. None of them, he's not hitting the side of the backboard. They're not all long. They're not all over the place. He's a shooter, and those are going to drop as he becomes comfortable.
I think I speak for pretty much all of us here. We're not worried. We're not worried about Dame. Let's be real, guys. I know he's having probably the worst shooting slump in his career, right?
Yeah.
Over this stretch of games. I don't know what the stats are exactly, but I know that it's probably the worst he's ever done. But I think I missed it. Did Paul George complain about the ball?
Mm-hmm.
Saying that it was difficult to shoot? If anything, it's helping him. He's been performing great lately.
For real.
I think that's the thing is that, and I'm pulling up the stats right now. I think what's interesting about that is you have somebody who is shooting 40+% from three, and he's complaining about the ball. It's not someone who's saying, look, I'm not playing well because this sucks. He's like, it's an adjustment, and he's playing well. And I think that's a different take on it, because it would be really
right.
Someone who wasn't playing well was having an issue with it. I'm just looking at I don't have my glasses on.
That's pretty interesting.
I'm old here, so hold on.
Hey, we're not far behind, man.
I'm 2 years behind you. I'm old.
Well, you don't look at. Let's see. Dame is shooting 23% from three. He's 15 of 65.
Yeah,
that's not good, right?
No, it's not.
Again, if this cold streak was happening in January, we wouldn't be that concerned about it because there was a body of work before the season. I hope this is a small sample size, but we'll see.
Yeah, and you got to remember Dame got off to a slow start last season too, and he turned it around just fine. I don't think there's anything to worry about but it definitely causes you to question some things, I guess. Some people. But moving on, CJ ended up with 25 points and 8 assists that game. Yeah. Powell chimed in with 14 points. And then Nurk is coming up with extremely quiet double-doubles this season. It's like I can watch him all game and think he hasn't done a whole lot. And then I look at the scoreboard and he had 13 points and 14 rebounds. Where did that come from? Is that just me?
No, it's funny you say that, because I'll look and it's the second quarter and he has 7 rebounds. What?
Yeah.
7 rebounds right now? How is that possible? And he had the one game where he had 17. He's just so much more involved in a different way in the offense, and the defense too. And what I've seen from Nurk is more of an aggressiveness on the offensive boards, and he's getting second, third chances. And he still needs to be a better finisher, but he's getting second and third chances. And look, you got a better chance of making 1 out of 3 than you do 1 out of 1, right?
Yeah.
Right.
When he gets those offensive rebounds and gets opportunities, it's not just that he gets another chance. It's also an opportunity for somebody else to get open, because when those rebounds happen, there's always some kind of breakdown on the defensive end. So if he gets that rebound and turns with all the 3-point shooters that they have, there's a chance somebody's going to be open.
Right. And we had briefly spoke about Anthony Simons. He chimed in for 19 points and shot 5 of 8 from beyond the arc, which Anthony is having an incredible start to this season and has really taken his game up a notch.
Yeah.
I wish somebody would have picked him as the breakout player of the year. Oh,
yeah.
I did.
I don't know if we mentioned
Erik
it to you yet, Travis, but we all picked our predictions for the breakout player of the year. And so far, Erik is right, predicting Anthony. I believe I actually picked Nurk to come out with a crazy. Actually, let me look at it.
You're not wrong.
That's not. But saying Nurk's going to have a breakout year, I think you're right. You know, and again, Roy Rogers coming in, he's known as being a big man coach. He's been a very good big man coach. So him coming in and working directly with Nurk, I think it's going to do wonders for his game. And sometimes you see it, and other times like, wait, who? Hey, what?
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
great.
even with all the dipsy doos and stuff that Nurk does, he's still shooting 54% from the field.
Yeah, which is better than his career average.
Yeah, and a 12 and 12 double-double, I'll take that every single night.
Yeah, he's doing
Please.
good.
Well, here's what
know?
I take away from the fact that the three of us picked different players, is that you have a roster full of guys that could have the potential to take off this season and take their game to the next level. And it's really exciting when watching this team. Anthony just seems to be taking off quicker than the others. I think that Hornets game, I think the issue is that we just couldn't shoot. And the Hornets could. I mean, the Hornets, they were 52% from the field and 47% from beyond the arc. That's pretty good.
You're right. And sometimes you got to give them credit, right? And they definitely deserve some credit there, but there were also defensive breakdowns, right? So they got some open looks. The Blazers had open looks in that game too. They weren't hitting them. And you know, the Hornets have only led at halftime once this year. They're a good second half team. And they played a good second half the other night, and they were hitting shots. And you know, Bridges is terrific. Ball is good. They've got a really good young core. And the Hornets, I don't know if they're going to be a playoff team this year. I would expect them to be a playoff team, but
I think so.
When we look back in April, and are the Hornets a 45-win team? Are they a 40-win team? Whatever they are, that I don't think that loss is going to look as bad. And again, it's hard to win on the road. It's hard to win on the road on the East Coast. Like, I know people like to make excuses, and other people say, well, that's not an excuse. I'm telling you, the road wears you down. I've felt it, and I'm not a player. I just sit here and I went out to dinner tonight with an old boss of mine who lives in Cleveland, and I got back to the hotel around 8 o'clock Eastern. I put on the World Series. I basically didn't move other than to go to the bathroom because I was doing prep for tomorrow's game until we started talking at 11 Eastern. So like, I'm not doing anything. And it's exhausting. So for the players, like when I went out to go get dinner, they were getting on a bus to go shoot and go to practice. And when I got back from dinner, it just happened to be the same time they were getting back from practice. So they work hard, and every team has to deal with it. Yes, but there are going to be some games where you just don't have it, and the time difference. You can make all kinds of excuses, right? We just have to understand the fact that it's the NBA. Like, the Lakers suck right now. The Suns have been bad.
It's great to see, by the way.
Yeah, I'm not complaining. It's funny. Even growing up in New York, and I didn't have really a reason to, I've always hated the Lakers.
Nice.
Yeah. But it's like the teams that have made a lot of changes, and the Blazers have most of the same players, but been a lot of changes with the coaching staff. There is going to take some time. We're still, it's November 2nd, man. There's a lot of time to figure things out. They're 3-4 right now. They're below 500. If they started 6-1, but in February they went in the stretch and they went 3-4, would we be concerned? No, it's such a long season. It's just hard. Like when an NFL team like the Bills, right? The Bills were a Super Bowl contender. They lose the first game of the season to the Steelers. And people are like, oh my God, the Bills aren't going to be what we thought they were. Look at them now. They look like the best. Like, we just gotta settle down. But that's what we do. We all overreact, invested in it, and we love it, and we want to see this team succeed. And it's physically painful when they don't have the success. So we want to find a reason why. We want somebody to blame. And sometimes it is what it is. And it will work itself out.
Yeah, there's definitely a learning curve with this team, and this game sort of against the Hornets kind of shows it. I mean, I've said it before, there's a Jekyll and Hyde with this Blazer team right now.
Absolutely there
where
is.
the first half, I mean, we were playing great defense, and then in the second half, we get completely almost steamrolled for the third and fourth quarter, where we just can't get our footing. And it just comes to show that everyone on this team is still learning. It's going to take some time. And me and Tim have said it before. We even said it last season. We're like, give this team some time to gel because it's definitely going to take time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if we have another conversation like this, and we're talking in January or February,
Right.
the
Please.
deadline, I'm happy to come talk to you guys anytime, especially on the road. Like, because at home, I've got 2 little kids. Now we have a puppy and family time, so it's tough when I'm at home. But I'm on the road; it's easy. Like if we're talking about in February, if we're still talking about them having to come together, that's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right now, and I'm not trying to take the easy way out and anything like that. I believe that it's going to take a little bit of time. Chad and I talked about that a lot before the season started. Don't be surprised if there is a bit of a slow start, and there has been.
Mm-hmm. And I think
they're too good. They're too good.
Yeah, and Blazer fandom should have expected that. I'm gonna throw it out there. We should have expected that, and if you hadn't expected that, I don't know what to tell you.
Well, I'm gonna just come out and say it, and we don't have to talk about it at all. But there's a group of Blazer fans, and I just threw my quote fingers up, that have been pining for a reason to root for this team to fail. So,
well, see, look, I can address that too, because I've talked about that with Chad before. And again, I keep making references to other sports. As a New York Giants fan, I want them to lose every game possible, because I want them to make a change at quarterback, because Daniel Jones is not very good. Change at general manager, because Gettleman has been terrible. They have more losses than anybody else over the last few years in the NFL. So while I am a Giants fan and I love my team, I was rooting for them to lose that game to the Chiefs. What was that, last night? I don't know what day it is. Because I want them to change. And there are Blazers fans who feel that way. And I'm not going to blame any fan for feeling the way that they do. People want to see them fail, not because they don't like the team or anything, because they want to see change. And there's not going to be any change if there's no failure. But that's not necessarily true, because we've seen plenty of teams that have had success, but the success isn't to the level that you want it to be, and then change comes. Like the Bucks with the trade for Drew Holiday, things like that. So I don't think that this team has to fail in order for there to be change. So I'm not going to blame a fan, me as a fan who's doing the same thing to another team right now, saying I want you to lose and suck so you can draft and get better. I'm not going to blame Blazers fans for feeling the same way about this team. The difference is while I don't know that they're a championship caliber team, this is a team that's absolutely in the mix, and I think they have a higher ceiling right now than they did last year. What does that look like? I don't know yet.
Right.
I don't know what this team's going to look like in April.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just surprised that we lost to the 76ers. That was a surprising loss to me.
Well, you probably thought the same thing last year when we didn't have Dame or CJ or half the other.
True. Yeah, that's a good point.
Went off, so
CJ Ellaby game, man.
Yeah, there's a different energy when you don't have your stars, right? Sometimes that happens. That team didn't have this guy or that guy. How did they beat us? We let that guy go off. Well, that guy went off because there wasn't anybody else to go off. So he's shots. And the way that I look at that, like Niang last night, he had a great game.
Yeah.
He's a good player, and sometimes every now and then he's going to have a good night. He had a good night last night because he had an opportunity and he took advantage of it. Is it because the Blazers didn't defend him well? Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes he got some open looks for three, and a couple of times he missed those, thank goodness. But he had an opportunity. Just like when we talked about it last year when the Blazers beat the Sixers, fans back in Philly, they're cursing up a storm.
Oh, yeah.
How does that happen? That's embarrassing.
Philly fans doing that? No way.
I love 76ers
Exactly.
Twitter, man. I love 76ers Twitter.
Right? But the way that we saw it from our perspective is, man, our guys really stepped up when we needed them to. That's how Sixers fans are looking at it today. Man, our guys really stepped up. Curry stepped up. Niang stepped up. Korkmaz stepped up. We're looking at it as, man, we should have beat that team. What happened? So it works both ways.
Yep.
You know what I thought was interesting from that game is that Rocco didn't take a single shot.
Yeah.
That's wild to me.
Yeah.
I mean, he doesn't take a lot to begin with, but not even one.
Yeah, it was interesting. Can't remember if it was last game or the game before. He only played like 19 minutes. Mm-hmm.
It was this game.
Yeah,
was
last
this
night.
game 19 minutes? Yeah, again, it all blends together. Plus, it's like I don't know, watch out. It's after midnight, so it's all getting fuzzy and blending.
We'll get you out of here.
No, it's all good. I still have plenty of work to do tonight anyway, but I don't have a reason for it. Like I'd love to be able to give you a breakdown and explanation of. But I don't know why. I don't know why he didn't have any shots last night.
Yeah, it was wild to me, but Dame had moments last game where he looked like he was returning to form. He ended up with 20 points and 10 assists. Still wasn't shooting great from beyond the arc, but maybe it's indicative that of what's to come. Maybe he's starting to put it back together. CJ ended up with 20, Powell with 22. You love to see that. And then Nurk was close to a double-double, but didn't hit double digits in either points or rebounds.
Well, I don't think he made a field goal in the first half last night. I think he was 0 for 1 in the first half.
Mm-hmm.
If we want to see this team go more through the paint, why is Nurk not taking more shots? And Legendre is a different guy than Embiid. Embiid's out, but yeah, Drummond's been a defensive player of the year candidate. He's been an all-star defensive player. And I thought he did a good job on Nurk last night. He forced Nurk out of the paint and passed the ball. There were just guys that were missing shots.
Yeah, he did. And Drummond played a great game. He ended up with 14 points and 15 boards himself. So he definitely played well. You already talked about Niang, but, Seth Curry, too. Former Trailblazer great Seth Curry put down 23 points on us. That hurts a little bit. And then Ant came through again I feel like at this point we should expect Ant to hit somewhere between 15 and 20 points a game.
Yeah, his confidence is off the charts right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the thing that I saw from Ant that I hadn't seen in the past is he's got this nice little right-handed scoop shot going into the lane, floating it off of the backboard and right into the basket. Just his development has been incredible. He's got more bags on his tricks in his bag. Yeah. What I really want to see is I want to see how he does going left though. I've seen him go right a lot. That's something that I'm kind of just waiting to see develop.
How old is he though?
Anthony,
he's only 22, right?
Yeah, he's.
Oh man, he's a young gun.
He's got time.
Young dude. With Simons last year, 70% of the shots that he took were 3-point attempts.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And now we're seeing that he can drive. He can get to the rim. He can make the defense collapse. He can drive and kick. And last year, before Norm showed up, because Gary Trent Jr. didn't do that. He rarely got to the free throw line. CJ has gotten to the rim more this year, but he's never been a guy who's going to drive and take it to the rim and draw fouls. He'll drive and run it up from 13 or float it in from the free throw line or pull up. He's a terrific mid-range shooter. But last year, Dame was really the only guy who's going to penetrate and get to the rim. CJ's doing it more this year. Anthony's doing it more this year. Norman Powell is really good at getting to the rim.
Yeah.
Now that burden of making the defense collapse and opening things up on the outside isn't solely on Dame. And I think that's another reason why you're not seeing Dame the same way that he was, because things are just different, and he's got to find what his groove is.
Mm-hmm. One of the craziest stats that I remember us talking about last season is that Anthony Simons had more dunks up until the dunk contest. He had more dunks in the dunk contest than he had all season.
Yeah.
That is ridiculous.
Yeah. Obviously, he can fly, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
he got
I think it came down to one of those things where it's just he just wasn't utilized properly, and I think that's what we're seeing this season is that it seems like he's been given the green light, and he's really flourishing.
Well, his body's developed too.
Yeah, definitely. He definitely looks more like a man now.
Mm-hmm.
And when you say that he wasn't utilized properly, that offense last year and the Terry Stotts offense, Anthony Simons is not designed for that offense. So you can't say, that he wasn't utilized properly, but because he didn't fit into what they were doing. And what they're doing now, running things differently, it's allowing players to, specifically Simon, it's allowing him to be himself because his game fits better into what they're doing now.
Mm-hmm. I think the bottom line is this team just needs a little more time, and once they get it, they're going to be scary. But if you guys don't have any more questions for Travis, I want to move into our final segment.
I got one.
Go ahead.
So we talked about his favorite call. We talked about his time in Portland, but we haven't talked about his favorite player during his time here. And I wanted to know if there's a specific player that you had some kind of rapport relationship with that stands out amongst the others.
Well, yes and no. Like there are a couple of little things here and there. Like so, after the game, I'll do a post-game interview if the Blazers win, and we're back at 113, and the player will be on the sideline. They'll put their headset on, and they just talk. One player, the 4 years that I've been doing this, has ever looked around and said, "Hey, where are you guys at?" And wanted to make sure that he had, even though it was from across the gym, had eye contact with us. Can you guess who that guy is?
CJ.
No.
Oh. I thought for sure. CJ's always been such a thoughtful guy.
He is. It was Carmelo Anthony.
I was going to say Carmelo. Dang it.
Carmelo.
It was Carmelo Anthony. Carmelo just gets it. I liked Carmelo. And, his game doesn't fit with this team anymore. So I think they made the right move moving on from him. But I loved watching him play. I enjoyed watching him play. So there was that. That wasn't like a personal interaction like, oh, cool, now me and Carmelo are going to get drinks after the game. Sweet. It wasn't anything like that. Everybody's always treated me really nicely. Myers Leonard was always really cool to me personally. I know a lot of people in the market felt that way. But
we love Myers.
Yeah, I mean, Dame, it's hard not to love Dame because for a superstar, like he's never, and I've seen Dame since his first game as a Blazer. I've never seen him look at somebody like he was better than them when he could probably look at everybody and act like he's better than them. And I've never seen him do that with anybody. And, as somebody who is, again, trying to blend in a little bit. If Dame and I are going to the same elevator, I always stop and let him go first. Last night when I was leaving, there was one of the turnstile type door, and I stopped the door halfway through to make sure he could come in. He always acknowledges that, and he doesn't have to. And I know it's just a stupid little thing, but he's very respectful. And the things that he does on the floor, 61 points, walk-off shots, waving goodbye, driving, big threes, the deep threes. I mean, there's so many things that he does on the floor that he's so much fun to watch. And it's an obvious answer to say Dame is my favorite player to watch, for sure. But he is as good off the floor as he is on it. Even if we're not friends and we don't hang out, there's just a level of respect that he has for people. And I think as the leader of this team, the personalities on this team are also that way, and they follow that too. I've never had a negative interaction with any player at all. So it's cool that Dame is that way, that he's just respectful of people, and I've got a ton of respect for him.
And you shared a moment with Rasheed Wallace.
Well, yeah, I did share.
I mean, that's pretty cool.
That's pretty awesome.
I was in the locker room for the CTC moment. I was standing like 2 feet away from him when that happened, so there was that. But again, these are things that like Rasheed would have no recollection of my existence.
But you do, and that's what matters. But
that's true.
Travis, we have to get to our final segment.
Yeah.
And that is called Giving Props.
So giving props is giving respect or credit due to a person, story, or a group of people. And so what I want to know from you three is, do you give this props? Last week, we talked about a man that was lost in the woods, and he was ignoring calls from his rescuers. And now I want to talk about another man who was lost, a 50-year-old man in Turkey. He was out drinking with his friends and he wandered into a nearby forest and didn't return. Worried about him, his friends alerted authorities, who set up a search and rescue mission to find him. Apparently, the missing friend ended up joining his own search party for hours before realizing that he was the person the search party was looking for, I'm gonna start with Travis. Travis, do you give props to this missing man who accidentally joined his own search party for himself?
Yeah, I do, because we've all had that moment where like we're talking to the phone, we're like, hey, hang on a minute, I gotta find my phone. Where is it? Like, we've all been there, man. So it's like, hey, what are we looking for again? Oh wait, me? Oh yeah, I'm right here. Hey, everybody, what's up? No, I'll give him props for that for sure.
Great
Search
point.
over.
Travis gives it props. Tim, what about you?
I think it's hilarious. Yeah, I have to give it props. Just for the simple fact that he joined his own watch party. Like, how often does that happen? That's incredible to me.
It did happen one other time, apparently in China. Erik, do you give this props?
Oh yeah. It takes a special. I mean, you can't make that up. You know what I mean? Like, you can't write that any better. That's a
Family
SNL
Guy
skit.
sketch or something.
Yeah. You can't
Totally.
write that better.
Absolutely. Well, it looks like we have props all around for our next story. In April, there was a battle of the Joshes. You guys might have heard of this. An adventurous 4-year-old was the surprise winner in this massive, wacky brawl among hundreds of people named Josh. And they were all armed with pool noodles, and a 4-year-old won. The goofy event organized by a college student in a field in Nebraska. Basically, they just wanted to know who was the Josh of all Josh. The creator of this apparently was extremely frustrated trying to make accounts for himself on Twitter, on Instagram, and his name was always taken. So he created this event. The winner was a 4-year-old. His name, of course, is Josh Vincent Jr. Do you give props to Josh for defeating all the Joshes? Travis.
Yeah, so I've got a few friends who are named Josh. I've known a lot of Joshes in my day, and if you guys listen to the show, you'll hear me refer to my friend Dash. His real name is Josh. A lot of guys named Josh. Like where I grew up, there were a lot of Joes. There were a lot of Pauls. So everybody that had like the same name had a nickname, right? There was something differentiating about them. So we're like, oh, have you seen Joe? Which one? There are 60 guys. See, I live in Newton, 60 guys over here named Joe. Which one? So it's kind of the same way with Josh out here. I know a lot of guys named Josh. So if out of all of these Joshes, and I mean, who wouldn't want to see a bunch of people fight with a pool noodle? If a 4-year-old came out the Josh of all Joshes, how do you not give that kid props?
Amen. Erik, do you give this props?
I'm giving little 4-year-old Josh props for winning and coming out victorious. The rest of the Joshes can all kick rocks. I would have punted a 4-year-old like Baxter and Anchorman, like no mercy. No props to those guys though. But yeah, mad props to little Josh.
Well, Erik is going.
Like kids around you, by the way.
I want to punt my own 4-year-old sometimes.
Erik is going with the mixed props over here. Tim, you're the final one. Go for it, buddy.
All right. I need to know what. So he is the Josh of all Joshes. Is that the only thing he won?
I think so. I think it was just for that
And a
title.
sucker.
I think they ended up like raising him above all the Joshes, and they were all chanting Josh.
Like a Rudy moment?
Yes.
Like at a Jewish wedding up on the chair.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay. And I guess I need more context. Like, was it just like they're just in a big circle in the middle of a field with pool noodles, and they just went and like maybe this kid was just the smartest person out there.
It was
He
like
just waited
tag. It was like tag. If you were tagged with a pool noodle, it's honor system. You're out of the battle.
Really? Yeah, of course I give it props. That's awesome.
Well, there we go.
Good for that kid. A 4-year-old.
Josh.
And I want to know who the oldest Josh was there.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Was there
But
like
anyway,
an 87-year-old guy out there who's with a pool noodle, he's trying to use it as a cane?
Failing, falling over.
anyway, I'm gonna cut this now. That's all we have for giving props for today. Travis, do you have anything that you want to plug that you've been doing?
Yeah. So I mean, you can listen to me with Chad again. I'm there in the off season and on when we're not on the road or playing games. So not very much right now. 620 Rip City Radio. Of course, you can hear all the games. And you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Travis Demers. I post a lot of like Blazer stuff, but I also post a lot of pictures of my kids. So you're gonna have to deal with that too. But I also give away free tickets, so come follow me.
Full disclosure, I did not follow you until halfway through our podcast, but
It's all good. It's all good. Wait a minute.
I was 6,886.
Oh, yeah, there you are.
Block. No, I'm kidding.
Great.
There it is, baby.
Mute.
There it is.
Muted.
Yeah, I'll have Chad and Travis block me. Right now it's just Chad, but I wasn't even that bad. He was just in a bad mood that day.
Travis, are you actually like a little excited to watch this Cavs team? Do you think they're interesting?
Yeah,
Just to pick your brain.
man.
Baby.
They got some good
Allen.
young players. I want to see what Mobley can do.
Yeah.
I didn't think he was ready yet. I was way off. Garland and Sexton, or as Larry Nance Jr. dubbed them last year, Sexland. They're a good backcourt. I want to see what Markkanen can do how much he stretches the floor. They're a pretty decent young team.
Yeah, they've got like a really weird construction. I remember reading their roster before the season started. I'm like, what is this? They've got all these big people. Even did Bol go there too? Is he there?
No, Taco Fall.
Taco Fall. That's right. I was like, what is this roster? It's so strange.
I feel like they're the antithesis to the Blazers.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Ro. Travis, that's all we got for you today. So we want to say big time thank you for joining the show.
Thank you.
We had a great time with you. I hope you did too.
Yeah, I did. It was fun, guys. Thanks for having me. We'll have to do it again.
Absolutely. Shout out to my co-hosts, the Encyclopedia Foster, the Bay Area Blazer, Ro, Zapanta, the Basketball Podcast Network, DraftKings, and especially you, our listeners, Twitter followers, and Bucket Busters. You make it so easy to keep stepping up to this mic. Don't forget to rate, follow, and subscribe if you're digging what we're saying. Be good to each other, Rip City. We'll catch you next time on the Busted Bucket Podcast. Thanks for listening.